Welcome to Banfield. What a difference a day makes. Exactly 24 hours ago on this very show, I was sharing some pretty outrageous details about a 7-year-old girl named Harmony Montgomery and her mysterious disappearance. Police reported her missing for the first time just this past weekend, even though she has not been seen in public for more than 2 years. Many of you shared my outrage that nobody in her life, including her parents, seemed all that worried that she'd been missing all that time, or that law enforcement was sharing almost no information. Well, all that has changed drastically. Harmony's father, Adam Montgomery, is now officially under arrest and facing several charges in connection to Harmony's well-being and her whereabouts. And while, yes, that is progress, the biggest question is still unanswered. Where is Harmony Montgomery tonight? Even though the heavily redacted court documents reveal several new details about that little girl's life and the investigation into her father, Harmony's still nowhere to be seen. Here's what the police say they do know. On November 18th, 2021, Harmony's mother, Crystal Sorey, contacted the Manchester police and said she had not seen her daughter for 6 months. Remember that timeline. She said her ex, Adam Montgomery, had custody of Harmony, but said she couldn't locate him or her daughter, who at that point was just 5 years old. That's when police asked the Division of Children, Youth, and Families to help find that father. And more than a month later, on December 27th, just a week ago, Family Services told police they could not find that father, Adam Montgomery, nor could they find Harmony. That is also when Harmony's mom slipped to police that she hadn't been completely honest when she told them it had only been 6 months since she last saw her daughter. Instead, she coughed up the fact that it had been closer to 3 years since she had laid eyes on her little girl last. She revised her story to say that last time she saw Harmony was April of 2019 on a video call with Dad Adam standing in the background. That is a very, very long time ago, especially for a little girl, again, who was just 5. Remember, April 2019 happens to be 3 months before the police got in their car and headed over to little Harmony's house where she lived with her father. That was after a relative reported to them that Harmony had a black eye. It is also a full 6 months before the last time Harmony was ever seen in public again. That was the day police made a second visit to her home and saw her. According to court documents, when police learned that Harmony hadn't been seen for more than 2 years, they immediately started looking for Adam Montgomery, Harmony's dad. They interviewed multiple family members, including Adam's current estranged wife, Kayla Montgomery. Adam and Kayla have 3 other kids together, and tonight they are with Kayla. Kayla reported to police that 2 years ago, Adam told her that he had driven Harmony to be with her mom in Lowell, Massachusetts. That was back in November of 2019. And she says she believed him because Kayla says it was the last time she ever saw little Harmony too. After speaking with Kayla, police finally tracked down Adam, this man who just happened to be sleeping in a car with a current girlfriend. Adam told police right then and there, he thought Harmony was living with her mom because, and this part is important, Adam said the mom had, quote, come to pick Harmony up from him back in April of 2019. Devil's always in the details, friends, because those 2 stories just don't match up. Did the dad drive little Harmony down to Massachusetts and drop her off with mom, or did the mom drive up to New Hampshire to pick Harmony up from dad? That little mess up in the stories was enough for police to arrest and charge Adam, and he currently faces 1 charge of felony second-degree assault, 1 misdemeanor charge of interference with custody, and 2 charges of endangering the welfare of a child. This morning in New Hampshire, he waived his arraignment, and he is being held without bail in a Manchester jail. But police still don't know where Harmony Montgomery is tonight, and they are continuing to search for her. One of Hagen, she's a former child abuse prosecutor, and Asha Musi is a licensed clinical social worker in child welfare services. Welcome to you both. Let me start with you, Ashleigh, just because you've got this background. I don't understand, and please get me off the ledge, how for over 2 years, nobody did a welfare check on this little girl. There were issues, big issues. Nobody from the state ever dropped by to say, show us the child. How is that possible?
Hi, thank you for having me. I think there are so many unanswered questions. So there's a lot of things that we don't know. So just from my understanding, in 2019, when the dad had custody or got custody or was granted custody of the child, maybe he was a non-involved party on that investigation. The child protection or the state made a decision to say that he was deemed fit to parent. If he wasn't involved, child protection normally has a responsibility to seek out other parents. She may have not, there may have not been a reason for her to come into care. So she was placed with her father. So the questions are, if her other child was adopted, then maybe mom's rights were terminated. So mom is not supposed to, if court terminated her rights, the arrangement that she had with the father was something that he was doing outside of the decisions that were made by the court. So because we don't know, like who reported her missing, when the police saw her in 2019 and she had a black eye, there's just so many unanswered questions. And when you don't have a lot of information, it's hard to make an assessment about what happened. If welfare checks are being done, it's because an investigation opened. Someone called. There had to have been a concern and a reason for someone to respond. Were they able to locate her when the call was made? It does sound like they kind of have moved around and been around. So maybe child protection did go out, try to find her, couldn't find her, didn't know where she was. It's just so many unanswered questions.
So, Michelle, jump in here because as as an attorney, but also former child abuse prosecutor, I'm sure that you're just, raging as I am. Here's what I don't understand. There was a bad history of these two parents. They lived on the street. They had substance abuse problems. These two children, you just heard from Jameson's dad, adoptive dad, and this little Harmony, they'd been in and out of foster care at least 9 different foster homes in 2 years. So, whatever arrangement is made, custodial or otherwise, I just feel like when you've got two parents like that, it feels like it should just be an automatic that there would be regular visitation by the state.
Yeah, it sounds like many agencies dropped the ball here. So I've got a couple questions. Number one is, who gave this father custody? And number two, why wasn't the father arrested at the scene when the police officer saw the black eye?
And well, that's a very good question, right? Can you answer it?
Can I answer it?
Yeah, like how does that happen?
I think the good people of Manchester need to put together a task force and start asking questions, not only of Child Protective Services as to why she was shuttled between foster homes and then reunited with her father, who went to jail for shooting someone and has a rap sheet. And then at the scene, the police officer is there, sees the black eye on poor little Harmony, and doesn't arrest the father when he knows, I assume my facts are right here, he was told by the uncle that the father admitted to bashing her around the house. And the police officer is standing there and sees the visible injuries on a little girl. And
well, that's interesting.
I'm sorry, I get crazy about this stuff.
I do too, and I'm trying to put together a timeline here because I always want to give, there's the quote. This is what the father said according to the father's uncle. So this would be Harmony's great uncle. I bashed her around this house.
Right.
So, Asha, the thing is this quote didn't surface until just like last week, December 30th. The affidavit says that the police got more information from great uncle Kevin. Great uncle Kevin is the one who seems to have taken action twice. He called protective services out, in July of 2019, saying, I see a black eye on my my grandniece. And then he called them back out to the home. We don't know what the incident was, but 3 months later, in October. That's the last time anyone ever saw her. And then it turns out just last week, he tells police that, his nephew, this Adam Montgomery, said, I bashed her around this house. I guess the question, Ashleigh, do you have to have a quote like that to arrest him? Like, shouldn't it be enough that great uncle calls them out and says, my great niece has a black eye, and they go out there? Like, shouldn't that have been enough for an arrest when family services and the police saw that she was injured almost, 2.5 years ago?
Why are you giving custody? Why are you?
One sec. Let me get Asha in here just with the
Sorry.
the child welfare background, because I'm curious as to how this just wasn't like not a red flag, but it was like it was a hammer and sickle.
I mean, it is a red flag, but unfortunately, it's not necessarily enough to say we're going to make an arrest. So if someone has a concern of child abuse or neglect, you call a hotline and make a report. Okay, this child was observed with a black eye. So then once the hotline takes that report, an investigator will respond to the call. So there's a number of ways that a 5-year-old can get a black eye. So we have to think about all situations. So we don't know how it happened. So maybe child protection did respond and she had a black eye. She's 5 and, assuming that she was verbal enough at the time for an interview and may have been asked, what happened to your eye? So we can't assume. All we can, there's an investigation that has to take place if someone has some concerns, but there's so many different scenarios, so many different questions, so many things that need clarification, but it definitely isn't an automatic reason to make an arrest because a child has a black eye.
I'll tell you also, all these stories I've covered in this line of work, I hear regularly how overloaded Child Protective Services in every state are. This is not just, unique to New Hampshire. It happened in Florida too. And I'm going Florida here because there was another story of a little girl who was missing with her mom not saying anything that ended up being a very big story. It was Casey Anthony. And Michelle, quickly, when Casey Anthony was out there and said, I don't know where my daughter is. She's, with the nanny or something, it was nuts. She faced similar charges, giving false statements, child neglect, obstruction of criminal investigation, and eventually it was first-degree murder and a whole bunch of other stuff. I called her judge, Belvin Perry, today. And I said, first of all, I wanted him to be on the show. He's not able to. He's actually getting an award in Florida. Good for him. But he did give me this statement. I want to read it to you. This is Judge Belvin Perry of the Casey Anthony trial. He said, if we're going to protect children and if we're serious about protecting children where parents have a track record of abuse and neglect of their children and have issues themselves, and if those kids remain with one or both of those parents, the state has an obligation at least every 90 days to do a wellness check to make sure those children are okay. Michelle, last question to you. I've got like 25 seconds left. Are they in trouble? Are the state agencies in trouble up there, the police and child welfare, or is it next to impossible to prosecute them?
I'm sure there's a fine lawyer in Manchester who could take this on and hold these agencies accountable. But I would also like to say to the people of Manchester to protect your children. If you see something, say something and listen to these kids. And I don't know why Child Protective Service ever allowed or a judge gave custody to this father with this criminal history. And I'm sure he did not read this behavior in a magazine. He was probably abused or witnessed abuse. Not that that's an excuse, but the severe discipline that the great uncle is talking about now, that he imposed on Harmony, these are all red flags and somebody should have stepped in. And I think the parents are going to—
who knows if it's discipline, right? Who knows if the black eye was discipline? It might have just been frustration. You never know. Gosh, well, you really wish that Blair Miller, had been given custody of little Harmony. Okay, I have to leave it there. Michelle Hagan and Ashleigh Mosi, thank you so much. It's just great to have your perspective. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.